All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Chief Meteorologist Taylor Kanost. We appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube. We're glad to have you this evening, and obviously all eyes on what's going to be a very busy few days for us here in the Midlands and across South Carolina. So I want to provide you the latest updates, latest data we're seeing on the weather prediction models, and just get you prepared for what's going to be potentially a dangerous few days for us in South Carolina. So just got a new update from the National Hurricane Center. Tropical Storm Debby, maximum winds are down to 45 miles per hour, but the biggest thing to note here is the movement. It is slowly moving to the northeast at 6 miles per hour. That's the big problem with this storm. It's not so much the wind it's producing, it's the slow movement of this system, taking its sweet time getting from point A to point B, and since it's so slow moving, it's going to lead to widespread flash flooding. We are already starting to see that in far southern parts of South Carolina, down in the low country. Flash flood warning in effect right now, and that likely will be the first of several flash flood warnings we see over the next several days. Heavy rain falling across the low country, beginning to spread northward into the southern Midlands. Take a look at some of the radar estimates for rainfall over the past 24 hours. Near Savannah, anywhere from 4 to 6 inches estimates, and most of that falling in the past several hours. Around Charleston, close to 3 inches of rainfall so far today, and it certainly drops off once we get to the southern Midlands with not much heavy rainfall locally yet, but all this heavy rain that's currently falling in the low country is going to be heading northward toward us pretty soon. Right now we have light rainfall continuing to fall south of I-20 for the most part, so stretching from Manning, St. Matthews over to Orangeburg, Wagoner, and Aiken, dealing with some consistent light rain at this moment. But again, it's slowly nudging northward. It's going to overcome a little bit of dry air, and as Debby drifts northward, we're going to see that rain expand across the area. Here's the view across various parts of the state this evening. In Columbia, we are dry. In Charleston, the rain is falling, the wind is picking up, and you can notice there that camera is bouncing around in that breeze. We have some rain in Myrtle Beach, but no flooding there just yet. Near Savannah, this is on I-95, things are becoming a mess. I showed you that flash flood warning. That camera right there is located within the flash flood warning. Still decent enough conditions for traffic to make it through on I-95 for now. We'll see how much longer that remains the case. Certainly not going to be easy to travel on I-95 these next few days, that is for sure. Here's the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center issued at the top of this last hour just a few minutes ago, and it shows that, again, this system is going to move very, very slowly over the next several days. By 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, it's going to be close to Savannah. And then from that point through about Thursday afternoon, it's going to hover near or just off the South Carolina coast, and then may make its way back inland around the PD on late Thursday before drifting northward into North Carolina as we head into Friday. So from now through at least late Thursday, this system is going to be a problem for us. And again, it's the slow movement that's going to lead to significant rainfall in the days ahead. Here's the latest Future Watch data, and it shows that overnight tonight, I don't expect major problems. We will start to see those heavy downpours drift into the southern Midlands. So first thing out the door tomorrow morning, if you live in Orangeburg, maybe around Manning or Santee, there could be at least some ponding on the roads at that time. But it's going to be the consistent heavy rain that falls throughout the day tomorrow that's going to cause some big time issues, especially for folks south of I-20. It's going to be potentially relentless heavy rainfall that is going to likely lead to some flash flooding. Those of you north of I-20, it's not guaranteed to get the heavy rain. You're likely going to get some rain, but flooding rain, it's not necessarily as certain. But for communities like Sumter, again, like St. Matthews, perhaps Columbia, over to Orangeburg, back toward the Lake Marion area, it's going to be a mess on the roadways, and travel is going to be difficult. Roads, in some cases, will become impassable, especially those that typically flood. Yeah, you can bet they're going to flood again with this system, especially tomorrow through tomorrow night. Now, Wednesday, some of you may dry out, especially in the western Midlands. But as Debby kind of hangs out offshore, we will have the outer bands continuing to impact the eastern Midlands, perhaps as far west as Columbia during the day Wednesday. It's the exact location of Debby that's going to determine just how widespread this heavy rain will be for us locally. It's certainly going to be a bigger impact toward the coast, but here locally we will get affected by at least some of that heavy rainfall at times on Wednesday. It is possible that we get a brief break from it at times late in the day Wednesday, but heading into Thursday we will see additional chances at showers and storms. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the model's updating here, but as Debby starts to scoop back inland, I anticipate we'll have additional heavy bands of rain from the central to the eastern Midlands on Thursday. So bottom line is the next several days are going to be weather-worn days for that potential of flash flooding. A flood watch is in effect right now all the way through Thursday evening for the majority of the Midlands, the only exception being Fairfield, Newberry, and Saluda counties. Again, flooding might not be quite as likely for those locations as it's going to be for the rest of us. For tomorrow specifically, this is the outlook from a branch of NOAA that's called the Weather Prediction Center. They issue these excessive rainfall outlooks, and it's top of the scale for us tomorrow in the southeast Midlands. A high risk for excessive rainfall and flash flooding for communities again like Sumter, like Manning, Orangeburg, from Sumter over to Clarendon, Calhoun, and Orangeburg counties. That's where flooding is most likely tomorrow. Even then, a moderate level 3 risk for flash flooding will be in store for us along the I-20 corridor, including in the Columbia Metro. So that's no slouch either. That certainly is a considerable threat for us across much of the Midlands. Let me walk through several of our weather prediction models to give you what they are showing. Take these with a grain of salt. They're not going to be exactly right, but it gives us the general idea of what to expect for the next couple of days. This is through noon on Wednesday. Again, substantial rainfall for the areas I've been talking about. There's going to be a pretty sharp cutoff between this seriously heavy rain and more manageable rainfall, and I think that cutoff's going to lie pretty close to the I-20 corridor. So there is a scenario where Columbia doesn't have flooding rain tomorrow, but there's also a scenario where it could be serious flooding. It's going to be a fine line. Very close call for us in the Columbia Metro. Here is the high-res rapid refresh model. Pretty similar setup here. Significant rain possible for the next 48 hours or so for folks in the southeast quadrant of the Midlands. This last model here is the European model, which is not quite as aggressive as the other ones I showed you. This is less likely to be correct. I hope it's right, but it's less likely to be correct compared to those last couple I showed you. This is the outlook from the Weather Prediction Center for rainfall totals over the next 5 days, where you see the yellow here is projected 15 to 20 inches of rainfall. Flooding a near guarantee for much of the low country and the PD for the next several days. It's not going to be nearly as much of a concern up in upstate South Carolina. Here in the Midlands, it's the haves and the have-nots. The farther southeast you go, the more dangerous this rain is going to be. It's possible we get up to 15 inches of rain in isolated spots of the southeast Midlands. Those numbers drop off the farther northwest you go. My forecast for Columbia is about 5 to 8 inches of rainfall, but there is a low floor and a high ceiling to that forecast. So if we have a little shift in Debby one way or the other, compared to what the models are showing now, that could have a big impact on the amount of rain you end up seeing in your particular location. Lexington, I think approximately 4 to 7 inches is a reasonable range for rainfall for you folks there. Newberry, 1 to 3 inches. Again, fairly manageable rain expected for you around Newberry County. Here's that low floor, high ceiling scenario I'm talking about. We can call it a boom or a bust type forecast. There's a wide range of possibilities for Columbia since we're on that tight gradient. So it makes this a pretty tricky forecast. Again, I'm forecasting 5 to 8 inches, but there is at least a possibility that we see upwards of 10 to 12 inches around the Columbia Metro. I think that's worst case scenario. Best case scenario, Debby shifts a little farther to the southeast than we're expecting. We end up with closer to 1 to 3 inches, and it's not as serious of a concern for us in Columbia. But again, I think there's a pretty safe bet that we do have at least some flooding in the Columbia Metro over these next several days. A lot of chatter on social media, even in these recent press conferences from government officials, comparing this system to the floods of 2015. That's kind of the watermark flood for us, so to speak. So let's compare, shall we? These are the totals we had back in October 1st through October 5th of 2015, and this is our forecast for the next several days. For the majority of these locations, the forecast is not quite as high as what we saw 9 years ago with that October 2015 flood. So that's at least a silver lining, is it's not expected for the most part to be quite that bad. Having said that, this is a serious situation. There is going to be flooding. It just may not be quite as bad as what we experienced back then. Hopefully that pans out to be true. I do want you all to be aware that if you have travel plans, do not try to drive through a flooded roadway. It only takes 1 foot of running water to cause at least some smaller cars to get carried away in those flood waters. For most vehicles, including SUVs and trucks, all it takes is 2 feet of running water to carry those away from the roadway. So don't risk it. Also, you don't know if the road has been compromised beneath those floodwaters. There are scenarios that we've seen in the past where you have a flood pass over a roadway, it washes out the road, but you can't tell because there's water on top of it. Car tries to go through it and it ends poorly. So don't risk it. It's not worth it. You're not only putting yourself in danger, but you're putting emergency personnel that would have to rescue you in danger as well. So let's try to keep everyone as safe as we possibly can. So we've talked all about the rain. That's by far the biggest threat. Wind is going to be noticeable, but not what you would typically expect from, say, a stronger hurricane. This is a tropical storm and expected to remain tropical storm strength as it meanders around South Carolina these next few days. Wind gusts could get up to 40 miles per hour in spots these next few days. I don't think it's going to consistently be that strong for us. Probably staying closer to the 20 to 30 mile per hour range most of the time. But again, occasional gusts up to 40 miles per hour could be enough to knock down at least some trees and some power lines. You got to keep in mind that our ground is really saturated. Those roots may not be quite as secure in the ground with this wet surface compared to when it's dry outside. So that combined with a consistent wind might be enough to knock down trees, maybe more so than they typically would in your run-of-the-mill severe thunderstorm when it's drier outside. So just something to keep in mind. There will likely be at least some power outages, maybe not a significant amount, hopefully not, but be prepared for that possibility. Make sure you have your emergency kit ready to go, have flashlights packed, keep your phone charged as much as possible these next few days. It might not even be a bad idea to get those vehicles filled up with gas just in case some gas stations run out of power and they can't provide that service for you. Here's a quick recap of what we can expect these next few days. By far, the biggest threat is flash flooding, and the highest threat is for the southeast Midlands over these next several days. So if you live south and east of Columbia, it's time to at least mentally prepare what you're going to do if you are asked to evacuate your location, especially if you live in an area that is prone to flash flooding. Have that plan ready to go in case that worst case scenario develops. Travel will be difficult across the area the next several days from the Midlands to the coast. It's going to be tough to get around, to say the least. As I mentioned, some tree damage and some power outages will be possible. The good news for us here locally in the Midlands is, at least for the time being, it does not look like we have much of a tornado threat these next few days. We're not going to be in the right position, the right quadrant of the hurricane, or the tropical storm rather. So that threat should stay confined closer to the coast rather than us in the Midlands. Now, it's possible we get a brief spin up in the far eastern Midlands. We'll let you know if that threat increases, but for the time being, it primarily looks like heavy rainfall. Some stronger gusts at times will be our main concern here over the next several days. We'll, of course, be here to watch it all and track it all for you over these next several days as well. Our complete team coverage will continue tonight at 10 o'clock on Watch Fox News, so please be sure to tune in then. We'll be here over the next several days to keep you updated on what could be a busy and dangerous time for us here in the Midlands. So please, everyone, stay safe, be smart these next few days. We appreciate you tuning in this evening, and again, you can catch the latest coming up on Watch Fox News at 10 o'clock.